The morning I found the bright orange violation notice stapled to my diesel Ford F-350's windshield. I was 3 hours away from what meteorologists were calling the worst snowstorm to hit Colorado in 15 years. I pulled the paper free, my breath fogging in the cold Denver air as I read the typed words. The notice informed me that my commercial snow plow truck violated the newly enacted Green Vehicle Initiative passed by the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association. Effective immediately, all diesel vehicles over 10,000 pounds were banned from overnight parking in driveways or streets within the community. I had 48 hours to relocate the vehicle permanently or face daily fines of $500. My name is Nathan Porter, and I have owned a professional snow removal business for 8 years. I lived in Meadowbrook Heights, a planned community of about 200 homes in the suburbs west of Denver. The neighborhood sat at an elevation where winter storms hit hard and fast. My business, Porter's Snow Services, handled contracts for 12 commercial properties and about 30 residential clients, including 15 homes right here in my own neighborhood. I read the notice twice more, looking for some kind of mistake. There was none. At the bottom, in neat cursive, was the signature of Susan Hartwell, the HOA president. Below that, it listed an emergency board meeting scheduled for that evening at 7. I checked my watch. It was 6 in the morning. The storm was supposed to start around 9, and I had equipment to prep, salt to load, and a crew to coordinate. My phone was already buzzing with weather alerts. I called my business partner, Mike Chen, as I walked back toward my house. "Did you see the weather?" Mike answered without saying hello. "I saw it. Listen, I have a bigger problem. The HOA just banned my truck from the property." "What, your plow truck?" "Yeah, some new green initiative. No diesel vehicles over 10,000 pounds. Mike was quiet for a moment. "Can they do that?" "I don't know, but they did. There is a meeting tonight. Tonight, we are going to be plowing all night tonight." "I know." I spent the next 3 hours getting ready for the storm. My crew consisted of Mike, my younger brother Danny, and 2 seasonal guys, Jose and Brett. We had 3 trucks total. Mine was the biggest, a 2019 F-350 with a 9-foot commercial blade and a salt spreader. It was the truck that handled the largest parking lots and the heavy-duty work. By 8:30, my phone started ringing with clients checking that we were ready. By 9:15, the first flakes began falling. By 9:45, it was coming down hard. I tried calling Susan Hartwell twice during the morning. Both times it went to voicemail. I left a message explaining that I ran a snow removal business and needed to discuss the new policy. She did not call back. The storm intensified through the afternoon. By 3 o'clock, we already had 8 inches on the ground and the forecast kept getting worse. The governor issued a state of emergency. All non-essential travel was banned. The HOA meeting was supposed to be at 7. I called the community center where meetings were held. A recorded message said it was closed due to weather. I tried Susan's number again. No answer. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. HOA meeting postponed. New date TBA. Violation notice still in effect. Remove vehicle within 48 hours or face fines. Susan Hartwell, HOA president. I called immediately. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. "Mrs. Hartwell, this is Nathan Porter from 4587 Ridgeview Drive. I need to speak with you urgently about the vehicle ban. I run a commercial snow removal service and that truck is essential equipment. I cannot simply relocate it. I have clients depending on me, including 15 homes in this neighborhood. Please call me back." I did not hear from her. We plowed straight through that night and into the next morning. The storm dropped 23 inches before it finally moved on around dawn. My crew and I worked for 18 hours straight. We cleared every contracted property, including all 15 driveways in Meadowbrook Heights that had hired me for the season. When I finally made it home at 8 in the morning, exhausted and barely able to keep my eyes open, there was another orange notice on my truck. This one informed me that I had 24 hours remaining to remove the vehicle. It reminded me that violations would result in $500 daily fines and potential towing at owner's expense. I was too tired to be angry. I went inside, took a hot shower, and collapsed into bed. I woke up 6 hours later to my phone ringing. It was Margaret Stinson, an elderly woman who lived 4 houses down from me. "Nathan, dear, I just wanted to thank you for clearing my driveway so quickly. I know it was a terrible storm. You and your crew are lifesavers." "You're welcome, Mrs. Stinson. Happy to help." "I heard about the HOA notice on your truck. Susan was talking about it at the community center before the storm. I think it is ridiculous. How are you supposed to do your job without your truck? That is what I am trying to figure out." "Well, I signed a petition that is going around. Several of us think this new policy is absurd. I just wanted you to know you have support." After we hung up, I made coffee and started researching. The HOA's governing documents were available online. I pulled up the CC and Articus, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that all homeowners agreed to when buying property in Meadowbrook Heights. I found the section about vehicles. It prohibited inoperable vehicles, recreational vehicles over a certain size, and commercial vehicles with visible advertising from being parked in driveways overnight. My truck had my company name and phone number on the doors, but that had never been an issue before. More importantly, there was nothing in the original CC and Articus about diesel engines or vehicle weight. I checked the meeting minutes from the past 6 months. The Green Vehicle Initiative had been proposed at a meeting in November. According to the minutes, the vote was 5-2 in favor, with all 5 board members voting yes and the 2 community members present voting no. Total attendance at that meeting, not counting board members, was 2 people. The policy stated that it was being implemented to reduce emissions, promote environmental responsibility, and align with Colorado's clean energy goals. It banned any diesel vehicle over 10,000 pounds from being parked overnight on community property, including private driveways. I called a lawyer friend, Tom Rodriguez, who did real estate law. "Can an HOA ban specific types of vehicles from private driveways?" I asked. "It depends on what is in the CC and Articus and what state law allows. Generally, HOAs have broad authority, but there are limits. They cannot create rules that violate fair housing laws, prevent you from reasonable use of your property, or contradict state law." "Is this about that notice you got?" "Yeah. Send me the CC and Articus and the new policy. Let me look at it." I sent him the documents and spent the rest of the afternoon trying to reach Susan Hartwell. She did not answer her phone and did not respond to my messages. That evening I got a call from Jennifer Pike, another neighbor 3 streets over. "Nathan, I heard about your truck situation. My husband and I want to help. This policy is insane. Susan has been on a power trip lately and we are tired of it." "I appreciate that. Do you know how I can get in touch with her? She is not returning my calls." "She does that. She picks and chooses who she talks to." "Have you tried showing up at her house?" "Not yet. She lives on Clearwater Lane, number 3821. The big house with the stone facade." "Thanks." I drove over to Susan's house at 6 that evening. It was a large 2-story home with professional landscaping and solar panels on the roof. A white Tesla Model X was parked in the driveway. I rang the doorbell. A man in his 50s answered. He was wearing business casual clothes and looked tired. "Can I help you?" "Hi, I am Nathan Porter. I live over on Ridgeview Drive. I need to speak with Susan about an HOA issue." "She is not available right now." "It is pretty urgent. It is about the vehicle ban that was just implemented." The man sighed. "You have the diesel truck?" "Yes," she mentioned it. "Look, I am her husband, Greg. Between you and me, I think the policy is too aggressive." But Susan feels strongly about environmental issues. She is not going to budge on this. "I run a snow removal business. That truck is how I make my living. There is nothing in the original CC and Articus that prohibits it. The board voted on it. It is legal. Can I at least talk to her?" "I have been calling for 2 days. She is at a city council meeting in Denver, environmental committee stuff. She will be back late. Can you ask her to call me? I will tell her, but I cannot promise she will." She did not call. The next morning, I woke up to find my truck had been towed. I ran outside in my pajamas, staring at the empty spot where my $35,000 piece of equipment had been parked. There was another orange notice, this one taped to my front door. It informed me that the violation period had expired and the vehicle had been towed to Mile High Impound. I was responsible for all towing and storage fees. The notice said I could not bring the vehicle back to community property. I called the impound lot. The fees were already at $450. It would cost $75 per day for storage after that. I called Tom Rodriguez. "They towed it from your own driveway." "Yes." "That is aggressive. I reviewed the documents you sent. Here is the thing. The HOA has authority to create reasonable rules, but this seems to go beyond reasonable. They are preventing you from parking on your own property which you own. The driveway is not common area, it is part of your parcel. So what do I do? You can fight it. You would need to file a complaint, request arbitration or mediation, and possibly sue. But that takes time and money. The faster option is to try to get the board to reverse the policy." "How many board members are there?" 5. "You need 3 votes. Find board members who disagree with this and convince them to call a special meeting." I spent that day calling board members. There were 5 members total. Susan Hartwell was president. The other 4 were Robert Chen, Deanna Marshall, Kevin Wright, and Patricia Gomez. Robert Chen owned a landscaping company and understood commercial vehicles. He listened to my situation. I voted yes on the policy because Susan presented it as being about reducing pollution. I did not think about work trucks. I thought it was targeting people with old, smoky vehicles they don't use. "Would you vote to change it?" "I need to think about it. Can you come to my house tomorrow morning?" Deanna Marshall was sympathetic but afraid of conflict. "Susan is very passionate about this. I don't want to cause problems. My business is being destroyed over this. I cannot do my job." "I understand. Let me think about it." Kevin Wright did not answer his phone. I left a message. Patricia Gomez was blunt. I voted against the policy at the meeting. I thought it was too broad. Susan pushed it through anyway. I will support changing it, but you need at least 1 more vote. So I had Patricia for sure, probably Robert, maybe Deanna. I needed to talk to Kevin. I went to pick up my truck from impound. The fees were now $525. I paid with a credit card and drove the truck to a storage facility outside the community. It cost $150 per month for an outdoor space. Over the next 3 days, I tried reaching Kevin right a dozen times. He never answered and never called back. I talked to more neighbors. The petition that was going around had 63 signatures, asking the board to reverse the Green Vehicle Initiative. Some people signed because they supported me specifically. Others signed because they were tired of what they saw as board overreach. I finally got Robert Chen to agree to vote for a policy change. He came to see my operation, looked at the truck, and understood that this was legitimate commercial equipment, not some hobby vehicle. "I will support a revision that exempts commercial work vehicles," he said. Diana Marshall eventually agreed too, but only after 15 neighbors called her expressing their opposition to the ban. That left Kevin Wright. He was the deciding vote. I learned from Jennifer Pike that Kevin worked as an executive at a tech company in Denver and traveled constantly. She gave me his email address. I sent a detailed email explaining my situation and asking for his support. I included photos of my truck, my business license, and letters from clients. He responded 3 days later with a single sentence: "I support the environmental goals of the policy and will not vote to change it." I called Tom Rodriguez. "I have 2 definite votes to change the policy and 1 probable. I need 1 more, but I cannot reach the 5th board member." "Then you need to force a meeting. Check the HOA bylaws. There should be a provision for homeowners to call a special meeting." I checked. The bylaws stated that any homeowner could petition for a special meeting if they gathered signatures from 20% of the community. With 200 homes, that meant 40 signatures. I had 63 people who had already signed the petition opposing the policy. I drafted a formal petition requesting a special meeting to vote on rescinding the Green Vehicle Initiative. Within 4 days, I had 52 signatures. I submitted the petition to the HOA management company that handled the administrative work for Meadowbrook Heights. They confirmed receipt and said they would schedule the meeting within 30 days as required by the bylaws. Susan Hartwell called me for the first time that evening. "Mr. Porter, this is Susan Hartwell from the HOA. I received notice that you submitted a petition for a special meeting." "That is correct. I want you to understand that the board took the Green Vehicle Initiative very seriously. We consulted with environmental experts and reviewed Colorado state guidelines. This policy is good for the community. It is destroying my business. There are alternative vehicles available. Electric trucks are becoming quite common, not for commercial snow plowing. There is no electric truck on the market that can handle the work I do. I find that hard to believe. Tesla makes trucks. The Cybertruck is not rated for commercial plow equipment. Neither is the Rivian or the Ford Lightning. They do not have the payload capacity, the battery life in cold weather, or the ability to run hydraulics for 8 to 12 hours straight. I have researched this extensively. Perhaps you need to update your business model. My business model is fine. Your policy is the problem." The policy stands. If the community votes to overturn it at the meeting, so be it. But I will be presenting evidence about why this policy is necessary and important. The special meeting was scheduled for February 23rd, 3 weeks away. In the meantime, I was driving 20 minutes each way to the storage facility every time I needed my truck for work. It was costing me time and money. I had to turn down 2 new commercial contracts because I could not guarantee response times. Tom Rodriguez agreed to come to the meeting with me to provide legal perspective if needed. In the weeks leading up to the meeting, Susan Hartwell launched what could only be described as a propaganda campaign. She sent 3 emails to the entire community explaining the environmental benefits of the policy. She posted articles on the community Facebook page about diesel emissions and climate change. She organized a presentation at the community center about electric vehicles. I responded with facts. I posted detailed information about commercial snow removal equipment. I explained why electric alternatives did not currently exist for this type of work. I shared testimonials from neighbors whose driveways I plowed and from business clients who depended on my services. The community became divided. Some people supported Susan's environmental stance. Others thought the policy was overreach. It became the only thing people talked about at the grocery store, the gym, and the neighborhood coffee shop. 3 days before the meeting, Susan sent an email that changed everything. She announced that she had been in contact with several electric vehicle manufacturers and had confirmed that commercial-grade electric plow trucks were available for purchase. She included links to websites and spec sheets. I clicked on the links immediately. She had cited the Ford F-150 Lightning, the Rivian R1T, and the Chevy Silverado EV. I pulled up the specs for each one. The Lightning had a maximum payload of 2,000 pounds when properly equipped. My plow and spreader combo weighed 1,400 pounds, but that did not account for salt load, which could add another 1,500 pounds. The battery range was EPA rated at 320 miles, but dropped significantly in cold weather and under heavy load. Multiple reviews confirmed the range could drop by 50% or more in winter conditions with heavy equipment attached. The Rivian R1T had similar limitations. Maximum payload of 1,760 pounds and range issues in cold weather. The Silverado EV had better specs, with a payload around 1,300 pounds in the lower trims and up to 1,700 in the work truck configuration. But it was not scheduled for wide release until late 2025, and the work truck version was still mostly theoretical. None of these trucks were designed for commercial snow plowing. None of them could run hydraulics continuously for 10 to 12 hours during a major storm. None of them had the charging infrastructure to get back on the road quickly during multi-day storm events. I compiled all of this information into a detailed report. I included manufacturer specs, expert reviews, testimonials from other snow removal professionals, and statements from equipment manufacturers who confirmed that no electric truck currently met the requirements for heavy commercial plowing. I sent the report to every homeowner email address I could find. I posted it in the community Facebook group. I printed 20 copies to bring to the meeting. Susan responded with another email saying I was spreading misinformation and that the technology existed whether I wanted to admit it or not. The night of February 23rd was cold and clear. The community center meeting room had a capacity of about 100 people. By the time I arrived at 6:45, there were already 70 people there. By 7, when the meeting started, people were standing along the walls. The 5 board members sat at a table at the front. Susan Hartwell was in the center, looking calm and professional in a navy blue blazer. Robert Chen sat to her right, looking uncomfortable. Patricia Gomez sat to her left, her face neutral. Deanna Marshall and Kevin Wright sat at the ends. Susan called the meeting to order and explained the reason for the special session. She said that, while she respected the petition process, she wanted to make clear that the Green Vehicle Initiative was an important policy that benefited the entire community. "We are facing a climate crisis," Susan said. "Communities like ours have a responsibility to lead by example. The presence of large diesel vehicles idling in driveways, emitting harmful pollutants, is contrary to the values we should uphold. The technology exists for Mr. Porter to continue his business with clean energy alternatives. The fact that he refuses to adapt is not a reason to abandon our environmental principles." She spoke for 10 minutes about emissions, air quality, and Colorado's clean energy goals. Some people nodded along. Others looked skeptical. When she finished, she opened the floor for comments. I raised my hand immediately. She looked annoyed but called on me. I walked to the front and handed out copies of my report to the board members. "My name is Nathan Porter, and I own the truck in question. I want to address Mrs. Hartwell's claim that technology exists for me to switch to electric. It does not. I went through the specifics. I explained payload requirements, battery life in cold weather, charging time, hydraulic systems, and operational demands. I showed manufacturer specs and quoted from equipment makers. The trucks Mrs. Hartwell cited in her email are consumer vehicles. They are excellent trucks for personal use, but they are not designed or rated for commercial snow plowing. The batteries cannot sustain the continuous hydraulic load required to run a plow and spreader for 10 to 12 hours during a major storm. The range drops by 50% or more in cold weather. There is no charging infrastructure that would allow me to recharge quickly during a multi-day event, and the payload capacity is insufficient for a full salt load plus equipment. I looked directly at Susan. I am not refusing to adapt. I am telling you that the technology does not exist yet for this specific application. I would love to switch to electric when it becomes viable, but right now, it is not. Banning my truck is not promoting clean energy. It is putting me out of business for no practical purpose. Several people applauded. Susan's face tightened. I think you are exaggerating the limitations. I am not. I have spoken with 3 different EV truck owners who tried to use them for plowing. All 3 had to switch back to diesel or gas. The technology is not there yet. Margaret Stinson raised her hand and was called on. I just want to say that Nathan plows my driveway and has for years. He is out there in the middle of the night during storms making sure elderly people like me can get out to the doctor or the grocery store. This policy is punishing someone who provides an essential service. More applause. Other neighbors spoke in support. A few people spoke in favor of the environmental policy, but could not address the practical issues I had raised. Then Greg Hartwell, Susan's husband, raised his hand. Susan looked surprised. Greg, you do not need to comment. Actually, I do. Can I speak? Susan looked flustered but nodded. Greg stood up. I am Susan's husband, so obviously I have a conflict here, but I think Nathan is right. I have been researching this since he came to our house. I even called Ford and Rivian directly. The customer service reps confirmed that none of their electric trucks are rated for commercial snow removal at this time. The technology is improving, but it is not there yet. I think we need to either revise the policy to exempt legitimate commercial work vehicles or rescind it entirely until viable alternatives exist. Susan stared at her husband, her face pale. Robert Chen spoke up from the board table. I agree with Greg. I voted for this policy because I thought it made sense environmentally. But after learning more about Nathan's situation, I think we were too broad. I moved to amend the Green Vehicle Initiative to exempt commercial work vehicles used by licensed businesses operating within their professional capacity. Patricia Gomez immediately seconded the motion. Susan tried to regain control. This is not how we plan to handle this. The motion is on the floor, Patricia said firmly. We need to vote. Susan looked at Deanna Marshall and Kevin Wright, clearly hoping for support. Deanna looked at the crowd and then at the board. I think Robert's amendment makes sense. We can still promote clean energy without harming local businesses. 3 votes. The amendment would pass. Susan's composure finally cracked. This is ridiculous. We are caving to one person's refusal to modernize. We are correcting a policy that has unintended consequences, Robert said quietly. Call the vote, Patricia said. Susan, looking defeated, called for the vote. Robert, Patricia, and Deanna voted yes. Susan and Kevin voted no. The amendment passed 3-2. The room erupted in applause. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but Susan was not done. Fine. The amendment passes, but I want it on record that I believe this is a mistake, And Mr. Porter, I will be watching your operation closely. If there are any violations of noise ordinances, emission standards, or any other community rules, I will enforce them to the fullest extent." Tom Rodriguez stood up from the audience. "Mrs. Hartwell, I am Tom Rodriguez, an attorney representing Mr. Porter. I want to point out that what you just said could be construed as targeted harassment. My client has operated his business in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. Singling him out for enforcement actions based on personal animosity would be inappropriate and potentially illegal." Susan's face turned red. "I am not harassing anyone. I am doing my job as HOA president. Then I am sure you will treat Mr. Porter the same as any other homeowner." Susan did not respond. She adjourned the meeting abruptly and left through a side door. Over the next few days, I moved my truck back home from the storage facility. I got a refund for the unused storage time. The HOA management company updated the policy documents to reflect the amendment. I thought it was over. 2 weeks later, I got a violation notice for noise ordinance violations. It claimed I had been running my truck and equipment between 5 and 6 in the morning on 3 different dates, violating the community quiet hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. The dates cited were all days when I had responded to early morning snow events. I had left my house at 5:30 a.m. to start plowing commercial properties before business hours. I had warmed up my truck in my driveway for maybe 10 minutes each time. The fine was $250 per violation, totaling $750. I called Tom Rodriguez. "She is retaliating. You have any proof you were not violating noise rules?" "I was warming up my truck. That is not illegal." "What do the HOA rules say about noise?" I checked the CC and Articus. The noise ordinance prohibited sustained loud noise during quiet hours but made exceptions for emergency services and essential activities. I think snow removal could qualify as essential, especially for a business with time-sensitive contracts. You need to respond in writing. Dispute the fines and explain that you were conducting essential business operations. I wrote a detailed response explaining that I operated a snow removal business with commercial contracts that required early morning service. I argued that brief vehicle operation for essential business purposes should fall under the exception clause. I requested a hearing. Susan denied my appeal in a form letter and said the fine stood. I refused to pay. The HOA placed a lien on my property for unpaid fines. Tom Rodriguez filed a formal complaint with the Colorado HOA Regulatory Office, arguing that the HOA was engaging in targeted harassment and retaliatory enforcement actions. Things escalated from there. Susan started citing me for other violations. My trash cans were visible from the street for more than 12 hours after pickup. My lawn was not mowed to the required height. I had a small oil stain on my driveway. Each violation came with a fine. The total reached $3,000 within 6 weeks. Other neighbors started getting citations too. Anyone who had signed my petition or spoken in my favor at the meeting suddenly found themselves being cited for minor infractions. Dead flowers in planters, slightly faded house numbers, garden hoses visible from the street. Jennifer Pike got 5 violations in 2 weeks. Margaret Stinson got cited for having a gutter that was slightly discolored. The community erupted. People started calling for Susan's removal as board president. A second petition circulated, this time calling for a recall vote. Susan responded by saying the recall petition did not follow proper procedures and was invalid. Tom Rodriguez reviewed the bylaws and confirmed that the recall petition was technically flawed. It needed to specify grounds for removal, and those grounds needed to meet certain criteria. We submitted a revised petition citing abuse of authority, retaliatory enforcement actions, and failure to act in the community's best interest. We gathered 97 signatures, nearly half the community. The HOA management company scheduled a recall vote for May 15th. In the weeks leading up to the vote, Susan sent daily emails defending her actions. She accused me and others of running a smear campaign. She said she was upholding standards that previous boards had let slide. She claimed she was being targeted because she was a woman in leadership who refused to back down. The argument did not work. The community had turned against her. On May 15th, the vote was held. 138 homeowners participated, either in person or by proxy. The vote to remove Susan Hartwell as HOA president passed 91 to 47. She was required to step down immediately. Robert Chen was appointed interim president. One of his first actions was to rescind all the retaliatory fines issued in the previous 3 months. I thought it was finally over. But 3 days after the recall vote, I received a certified letter from an attorney representing Susan Hartwell. She was suing me personally for defamation, claiming I had spread false information about her and damaged her reputation. She was seeking $50,000 in damages. Tom Rodriguez reviewed the lawsuit. This is a SLAPP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. She is trying to punish you for speaking out. Colorado has anti-SLAPP laws. We can file a motion to dismiss and potentially recover attorney fees. We filed the motion. The judge scheduled a hearing for June 30th. In the meantime, I tried to get back to normal. My business had suffered during the months of conflict. I had lost 2 commercial contracts and several residential clients who did not want to deal with the drama. I was behind on maintenance for my equipment and exhausted from the stress. Mike Chen had held the business together during the worst of it, but even he was ready for things to calm down. The hearing on June 30th lasted 2 hours. Susan's attorney argued that I had made false statements about her motivations and conduct. Tom Rodriguez presented evidence of everything that had happened, including the violation notices, the retaliatory fines, and the recall vote. The judge was not impressed with Susan's case. Mr. Porter engaged in protected speech on matters of public concern within his community. His statements were substantially true and made without malice. This lawsuit is dismissed. Furthermore, I am awarding attorney fees to the defendant under Colorado's anti-SLAPP statute. Susan was ordered to pay $12,000 to cover my legal fees. She appealed the decision. The appeal was denied 3 months later. By then, it was September. The recall vote had resulted in 2 other board members stepping down as well. There had been a special election, and the new board was filled with people who had supported reforming HOA policies. Robert Chen had been elected president officially. One of the new board's first actions was to create an appeals process for all HOA enforcement actions, and to establish guidelines preventing targeted or retaliatory citations. Susan and Greg Hartwell put their house on the market in October. According to neighborhood gossip, the fight had damaged their marriage as well as Susan's reputation. Greg had been embarrassed by the whole situation. They sold the house in November and moved to Boulder. I never spoke to Susan again after the recall vote. The last I heard, she had joined the board of an environmental nonprofit and was focusing her energy there instead of on HOA politics. My business recovered slowly. I rebuilt client relationships and took on new contracts. The following winter was busy, and I was grateful to have my truck parked in my own driveway, ready to go when storms hit. The whole ordeal taught me a lot about HOA power and the importance of community involvement. It also taught me that sometimes standing up for what is right means enduring a fight you never wanted. On a cold December morning, almost a year after that first orange violation notice, I was warming up my truck before heading out to plow. Margaret Stinson walked past with her little dog and waved. "Morning, Nathan. Storm coming in tonight." "Yeah, supposed to get 6 to 8 inches. I will sleep well knowing you will have my driveway clear by morning. You know it." She smiled and continued her walk. I climbed into the truck, the diesel engine rumbling steadily, and headed out to do the job I loved. The sun was just starting to rise over the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. The air was crisp and cold, perfect snow weather. I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The stress, the conflict, the legal battles, the community division. It had been exhausting and expensive and frustrating. But it had also shown me how many good people lived in this neighborhood. People who were willing to stand up against unfair policies and support their neighbors. Robert Chen had turned out to be a reasonable and fair HOA president. The new board had implemented several reforms that made the community better for everyone. They had established clear procedures for proposing new policies, requirements for community input, and protections against arbitrary enforcement. The Green Vehicle Initiative still technically existed, but the amendment exempting commercial work vehicles had made it a non-issue for me. And the broader conversation about electric vehicles had actually been productive once it moved past the immediate conflict. Several neighbors had bought EVs for personal use and were happy with them. The community had installed 2 charging stations at the community center for residents to use. I had even started researching electric options for my business, not because anyone was forcing me to, but because I was genuinely interested in the technology. I had spoken with several manufacturers about future models that might be suitable for commercial use. Ford had told me they were working on a heavy-duty electric chassis that could potentially support plow equipment, but it was still several years away from production. When the technology was ready, I would be ready to switch. But it would be on my timeline, based on practical considerations and business needs, not because of an arbitrary HOA policy created without understanding the realities of commercial operations. That morning, as I drove through the quiet streets of Meadowbrook Heights toward my first job site, I felt something I had not felt in months: peace. The truck ran smoothly, the equipment was in good shape, and I had a full day of honest work ahead of me. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Ready for the storm tonight?" "Ready," I texted back, and I was. The storm that night turned out to be bigger than forecast. Instead of 6 to 8 inches, we got 14. My crew and I worked through the night and into the next morning just like we had done dozens of times before. The truck performed flawlessly, the diesel engine running strong even in single-digit temperatures, the hydraulics operating smoothly through hours of continuous use. Around 3 in the morning, as I was finishing a large commercial lot in downtown Denver, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. "Hello. Hi, is this Porter's Snow Services?" "Yes, this is Nathan. My name is David Sullivan. I am the facilities manager for a medical complex in Littleton. Our regular snow removal company just told us they cannot handle tonight's storm, something about equipment failure. I know it is late notice, but is there any chance you could clear our parking lots? We have patients and staff who need to get in early." I checked my schedule. We were running ahead of time. "I can have someone there by 4:30. What is the address?" He gave me the details, and I forwarded the job to Brett, one of my crew members who was finishing up a smaller property nearby. That call led to a new commercial contract, one of the biggest my company had landed. By February, we had added a fourth truck to the fleet and hired 2 more seasonal employees. The business was growing again. In March, I attended my first HOA meeting since the recall vote. The atmosphere was completely different. Robert Chen ran the meeting efficiently and professionally. There was genuine discussion about community issues, and residents felt comfortable speaking up without fear of retaliation. During the open comment period, Robert announced that the board had voted to create an annual Community Service Award to recognize residents who contributed positively to the neighborhood. The first recipient would be announced at the spring community picnic. When May came around and the picnic was held, I was shocked to learn that I had been selected as the first recipient of the award. Robert presented me with a plaque that read, Meadowbrook Heights Community Service Award Nathan Porter for dedicated service to neighbors and commitment to community values. The recognition meant a lot, not because I needed an award, but because it symbolized how much had changed. A year earlier, I had been fighting just to keep my truck in my own driveway. Now the same community was honoring me for my work. Life settled into a good rhythm after that. The business continued to grow. I hired a full-time employee for the first time, a young guy named Chris who wanted to learn the trade. My brother Danny decided to go back to school, and I supported his decision while keeping him on for seasonal work. In July, I attended a small business expo in Colorado Springs. One of the exhibitors was an electric vehicle startup that was developing a heavy-duty work truck platform. I spent an hour talking with their engineers about the challenges of commercial snow removal. They were genuinely interested and took detailed notes. They said they were specifically trying to design vehicles that could meet the needs of contractors and commercial operators, not just consumer buyers. The technology is getting there, one engineer told me. Battery density is improving. Cold weather performance is getting better, and we are developing rapid charging systems that could work for high-duty cycle applications. Give us another 3 to 5 years. I will be watching, I said, and I meant it. I was not opposed to electric vehicles. I was opposed to poorly thought-out policies that ignored practical realities. By the time the next winter season came around, Meadowbrook Heights felt like a completely different community. The conflict that had divided neighbors and consumed so much energy had given way to a renewed sense of cooperation. People were more engaged in HOA matters, attendance at meetings was higher, and there was better communication between the board and residents. I continued to plow driveways for 15 families in the neighborhood. Margaret Stinson remained a loyal client and a good friend. Jennifer Pike and her husband became regular customers for landscaping work I had started offering in the off-season. In December, on the anniversary of that first violation notice, I was sitting in my truck waiting for a storm to start when I got a text from Robert Chen. Just wanted to say thanks again for pushing back last year. The whole situation forced us to re-examine how the HOA operated. We are a better community because of it. Thanks, Robert. I appreciate that. Also, fair warning, Susan Hartwell is on the ballot for Boulder City Council this spring. I laughed out loud. Of course she was. Good luck to Boulder, I texted back. The storm that night was moderate, only about 4 inches, but it was heavy wet snow that required careful plowing. I worked steadily through my route, clearing driveways and parking lots, doing the work I had built my business around. The truck ran perfectly, the way it always had. As I finished Margaret Stinson's driveway around 2 in the morning, I saw her bedroom light turn on. A minute later, she opened her front door and waved. I waved back. She gave me a thumbs up and went back inside. These small moments of connection, of providing a service that mattered to people, were why I did this work. It was not glamorous and it was not easy, but it was honest and it was needed. I thought about everything that had happened since that morning. I found the violation notice on my windshield. The stress, the conflict, the legal battles, the community drama. It had been one of the hardest years of my life, but it had also shown me what I was capable of when pushed, and it had revealed the character of the people around me. Some people, like Susan, were so committed to their ideology that they could not see the human impact of their decisions. Others, like Robert and Margaret and Jennifer and dozens of other neighbors, were willing to stand up for what was right even when it was uncomfortable. The experience had made me a better business owner and a more engaged community member. I paid attention to HOA matters now, attended meetings regularly, and encouraged others to stay informed and involved. I had learned that the best defense against bad policy was active participation. As dawn broke over Denver that morning, I finished my last job and headed home. The streets were quiet, the fresh snow reflecting the early light. My truck had performed flawlessly through another night of hard work, just as it had done for years and would continue to do until the day came when better technology truly was available. I pulled into my driveway, parked the truck, and shut off the engine. The diesel rumble faded to silence. I sat there for a moment, tired but satisfied, watching the sun rise over the mountains. My phone buzzed with another text. It was from a potential new client asking about residential snow removal services. I smiled and typed back a response. Business was good. The community was stable. Life had returned to normal, and my truck was parked right where it belonged, in my own driveway, ready for the next storm.